So what do you get if you merge a death adder with the MM531, EC2, and a cheese grater, or the XTRFY M4, and it's pretty damn good. Now the M4 is a right-handed ergonomically shaped gaming mouse that comes in at a length of 120mm, height of 39, and width at the grip position of roughly 58 to 60 depending on your hand size. And I say that because it curves outwards quite aggressively toward the back left. I found that this curve, along with my 19 by 10cm hands in palm grip, naturally encouraged my death adder shaped fingers toward the right side of those primary buttons. However, that wasn't something that caused any issues in game, and it had absolutely no impact on my ability to perform accurate horizontal movements. It was just interesting enough to mention, and I'd love to hear in the comments if it's just me. Now, whilst its shape is quite obviously ergonomic, with a back slope that both conforms to the shape of my palm and is gradual to promote vertical micro adjustments, they've obviously been inspired by ambidextrous alternatives given its flatter sides. This has struck a somewhat unique and interesting balance, and is why many other reviewers are likely calling it an unsafe shape. Whilst I don't necessarily agree with the sentiment, and that's with my hand size and at least with palm and claw type grip styles, I cannot speak for those of you out there with smaller or those that fingertip. I was a little worried, however, that utilising holes in order to bring its weight down to an ultralight 70 grams, and especially those on the sides, could have resulted in some discomfort when squeezing the mouse in certain situations, but I'm happy to report that they're small enough and that wasn't the case. The M4 is also well balanced toward the grip position, and they haven't sacrificed any structural integrity in reducing its weight either, i.e. there's no lateral movement or accidental side button actuations if squeezing with the power of Thor. Mouse 1 and 2 utilise on-run switches that are rated for 20 million clicks, and as they're separated from the top shell, they remain consistent right the way through. They're both snappy and responsive, and quite low profile up at the front too, which is nice, and I'd say they require the perfect amount of force for holding angles. Now the mouse wheel included, I'd say sits just behind the Death Adder V2 as a personal favourite, and this is because its 24 notches are subtle and smooth, with the button that's both distinct and yet not overly annoying to push in, i.e. it's kinda perfect for bunny hopping in game. The only thing I'd change in reference to the shell would be some slightly taller side buttons, which would otherwise aid in allowing my thumb to roll and actuate them. Here's a listen to them all. Underneath the mouse you'll find 4 100% PTFE mouse feet, which for a lack of better description really do fly, and also XTRFY's implementation of the PMW3389 sensor with DPI toggle. Now there's no software on offer, but the sensor features 8 predefined steps that do include 400, 800 and 1600, and absolutely no smoothing all the way up to its maximum 16,000, leaving no room for complaint, and we're ultimately looking at one of the most responsive mice on the market here as a result. You can additionally adjust the polling rate from 125, 500 and 1000 Hz, and also change between a bunch of RGB lighting modes using various button combinations on top of the mouse. In respect to that lighting, they have done a good job here, as there's no stupidly bright LED light attacking your eyes through any of those holes either. Finally, a 1.8 meter easy cord is attached, which when paired with their B4 mouse bungee should offer little to no resistance when swiping. The cable isn't as flexible as some other offerings I might add, but as a result, it doesn't look cheap and tacky either. The bungee itself is great and offers more freedom with less resistance than many other competitors, and that's despite of course how odd it actually looks. I just heed caution if you regularly swap between wired mice, and that's because the edges of the bottom clip are relatively pointy and could nag at a thread or two on a shoelace type cable. Now, since this is my first XTRFY mouse, we will perform some of my standard in-game tests to determine an expected level of performance for competitive FPS players. So in terms of mouse acceleration, moving the M4 from left to right of the GP4 at 4 different speeds show that we end up in roughly the same place, both slow and fast, and that's of course taking into account a small amount of human error. Now acceleration is good and welcomed by many arena FPS players, but only when it can be controlled and added by the user afterwards, so here their implementation is perfect. As for its max tracking speed, I can pretty much swipe the mouse as fast as humanly possible, thanks to its advertised max tracking speed of up to 11.43 meters per second, something I can get nowhere near. In terms of button latency, I've gone ahead and included a snapshot of Basogel's testing from Tech Power Up as he's already done the legwork. Now there's no firmware updates available from the website or support team, so what you see is what you get, but XTRFY have really done a fantastic job and you'll feel confident holding even the smallest of angles. I had no accidental clicks on human benchmark and my results were good, even if it's a bit of a pointless test. As for the button debounce time, we can see there are no issues using Shootmania's variable jump and executing mini jumps in game. An otherwise too high of a debounce time would make our smallest jump instead a medium-sized jump, and this is because the button isn't released quick enough. This also means there are no issues with full height rocky jumps in Quake because both mouse 1 and mouse 2 can be pushed down simultaneously without delay. i.e. you're not going to jump before you shoot or shoot before you jump. You'll always rocky jump to maximum height. And finally, whilst Liftoff Distance isn't customizable, it's likely perfect for many of you out there as it's below 1 DVD, i.e. it's less than 1.2mm. I personally prefer something a little higher as I tend to lean my mouse slightly whilst tracking to the right, so that did take my brain some getting used to, but the positive is that it otherwise forces good form and means DPI and sensitivity remain constant. So my final thoughts, well, I'm more than late to the party with this review, so let's keep it very personal towards me and my preferences. Now, whilst the XTRFY M4 is without a doubt an endgame mouse for someone out there, it's only about 98% of the way there for me, and I'll try to explain why. So whilst it's very clear that their team have consulted with both professional players and mouse enthusiasts alike in the development process, I personally struggled with its lower liftoff distance. If they could now offer a firmware update that would optionally increase this by even just a millimeter, it would be an immediate recommendation, but that is simply an issue with me and several years of bad form. It ultimately performed fantastically on every cloth pad I tried though, and once my stupid brain did decide to adapt, I found myself hitting like a truck and playing as confident as ever, and you would too. I'm crazy fast on those primary buttons, likely due to its lower profile design which I love, and its low weight plus snappy sensor made for a comfortable experience over several hours. What's funny is I suppose that on returning to my Death Adder V2, I actually ended up setting the liftoff distance to its lowest setting, so this mouse may have just corrected my poor form, and for that I really can't complain. So why might I not main it then? Well, it's quite simple really, and it's those holes on the side. Now whilst it wasn't an uncomfortable mouse to use by any stretch at the time, I do tend to squeeze my mouse when tracking at mid-range, and I could definitely imagine a heavy session causing some discomfort. If they were to release a version of this mouse without holes on the side but still on the top and bottom, I'd definitely consider it. In summary, if you're in the market and want a right-handed mouse that will absolutely enable you to perform at the highest level, and you don't care about those sides, then this really ought to be on your list to consider, period. Anyway, I'd like to take a moment and thank XTRFY for sending out the mouse, Bungie and pad to review, and I'm very excited to see more from this company moving forward. If you'd like to hear some other opinions on the M4, I will add some links to the video description for you to watch, but in the meantime, if you've liked the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and do stop by my Twitch stream where I broadcast weekly. If you have any questions or comments in the meantime, then you can also leave them down below and I'll get back to you, but for now, take care, keep gaming, and I'll see you in the next video.